So, yesterday might just end up being the strangest day of my life. I know this must seem somewhat out of character compared to last week, but everything has changed. So, yesterday, I woke up and sort of wished I hadn't. I lay there and the horror of it all just came crashing in on me, and absorbed in my own misery, I was trying to forget about everything that happened and just wish that I could die. And while I was lying there was this crash at the door downstairs, and I thought maybe the secret police had finally found us, so I hid under the covers and hoped that they'd come up and kill me where I lay. But no goons showed up, and in fact, all I could hear was just excited talking from downstairs, and I thought, well, they're far too excited about something, and it doesn't sound bad, which means someone's being stupid. So I got up and went down to make myself some coffee and find out what the hell was going on. In the kitchen, the Marys were in one of those incomprehensibly happy with joy moods, and everyone else was arguing. So I made myself some coffee and then asked somewhat peevishly what the hell they thought was going on. Andrew turned to me and gave that little boy grin of his and said, "It's true, he's back!" He then came up with this huge, ridiculous story about how the girls had been down to the tomb to put flowers and spices on the body, and they'd found the gravestone was away and the body was gone, and while they were trying to figure out what had happened, the teacher himself walked up to them and started talking with them, and he was alive. Peter and John, when they'd found out, had legged it down to the tomb themselves to see for themselves, and that had been the door crashing open and shut that I'd heard before. I told them that they were all idiots and took my coffee and headed upstairs to listen to Pink Floyd and pretend that none of this was happening. Finally, that evening I went downstairs again to get myself some food and found Thomas leaning against the window staring out moodily. I started making us some tuna sandwiches when the door crashed open again and Peter came dancing in, grabbed Thomas by the hands and started waltzing around the kitchen. Thomas is a fairly serious sort of guy. He's not really the waltzing type, and so he tried to brush Peter off and ask him what on earth he was doing. Peter started singing at that point. You know how good he is at that, saying that the teacher was alive and that everything was fixed and that he'd met him. Thomas got really angry at this point and stated that if he couldn't personally touch the wounds that he'd seen the teacher receive on the cross, then he wasn't going to believe any of it. He said that Peter was delusional and that if Peter hadn't been drinking, that's what he was going to start doing. So at this point he grabbed his coat and hat and stormed out, crashing through the door as he did so. At this point the door crashed open again and Cleopas and one of the others came in, saying that they'd met the teacher on the road to Emmaus and that he'd spoken with them. I was getting pretty tired of the door crashing open by this time, so I went and locked it. Anyone else who wanted to come in would have to use the bell. The whole story sounded pretty fantastic and ridiculous to me, so I was beginning to think that maybe all of them were just delusional or in denial, like Thomas thought, and maybe I should just go and join him down at the pub. When someone handed me a tray full of tuna sandwiches, so I took one and then almost dropped the whole tray. It was the teacher, and he smiled at me and took a tuna sandwich himself, sat down in his favourite chair, and just... he said he was alive, and we could see that, and he showed us the holes in his arms and in his feet, and he explained everything to us from the scriptures, how he was alive, and it made sense. And suddenly everything clicked into place. I really don't know what's going to happen, but everything's changed, and he's alive.